Hi! Welcome back, Fantasy Fiction Fanatics. It's great to see you again, and I hope you're doing well. Today we are finally finishing the last set of chapters for our Dragons of Spring Dawning, which means that we are at the end of our first series on this channel. I think it's pretty exciting to be finally done with our first trilogy. And even though there are tons and tons more Dragonlance books out there, and they are all amazing, this is the end of the main plot line, or the first conflict that happens in the Dragonlance series. And the Test of the Twins, which is the next three set of books, are on a different conflict. So we've got a lot to talk about. There's a lot that happens with our climax and everything at the end here. And so we're going to go ahead and jump right into our content today. And of course, we're going to start with our recap. Alright, so starting back at chapter 10, we've got Caramon and Barum are finally at the column that Barum found the green gemstone at. And in that process, they meet Rast, who is still alive. We finally have definitive proof. There we go. That Raistlin did survive and that he is wearing the black robes. He is guarding that column. Though he does let Barum jump and destroy himself on the column, which closes the door to Takissis and closes the door for her being able to be in that realm. At the same time, since we got a lot of flip back and forth during these chapters, the recap is a little hard to completely do the timeline. At the same time, Tanis has gotten that crown from Ariakis in our last couple of chapters, and he has now crowned himself. He tries to use that power of owning the crown in order to get Laurana to safety. It backfires on him in the fact that Laurana does not trust Tanis anymore, and she pushes him away, and he falls off the steps and loses the crown, and ensues chaos that breaks up in the hall. At the same time, Raistlin is helping Caramon, and they are going to try and get out of the temple, which is now falling to pieces because of the Queen of Darkness being once again shut away from the world. And Tanis is at the same time running after Laurana, trying to save her. He's running through the halls, going after her, trying to find her and still save her together. Raistlin and Caramon come upon Tika and Tass because they were at front of that door, and we weren't sure if they survived or not, but luckily both of them were alive. But Tass was fading quickly, which caused Raistlin to have to save him. And they end up getting pushed out by some Draconians and having to leave Tass's belongings behind. Tanis finally catches up with Laurana, and he ends up convincing her that they should escape together. Sort of. He's in the process of doing that when Kitiara comes up. And after the brief exchange, Lord Soth is coming towards them, and she ends up letting them go and escape. And they escape together, where they come upon Tass's belongings, and the dragon that Fizban had given to Tass is still in the pouches. So they escape on his dragon. Though you don't totally see their escape, but you do know that they escaped through the dragon based on when you see them later. Caramon and Raistlin and Tass and Tika all make it out of the temple, and Raistlin leaves on Cyan Bloodbane, which is that green dragon that was tormenting the Sylvanisty forest. And he leaves Caramon behind once again. But the rest of the friends go ahead and meet Tanis and Laurana, who is sitting with Fizban, who we now know as Paladine. He is the good to Takissis' evil and was helping them out with all that. And that he was the one that got them started on the journey to begin with. Going from there, all the companions finally get a moment of rest. They talk together, they decide what they're going to do moving forward. And that's kind of where we leave them for the story. Everything has gone not back to normal yet. There is no normalcy, but they have gotten rid of the Queen of Darkness and locked her back away as they see the constellations come back into the sky. And the only thing that's left is at the very end, our authors do give us the next little piece that goes to where Raistlin ends up at the Tower of Planthus, the one that was cursed. And he enters because he has been deemed, or at least he deems himself, we don't know exactly how he became by this title, but he is the master of past and present, so he is allowed to enter the tower. So yeah, a lot of things happen in this set of chapters. We've got tons of things to cover. So yeah, let's go ahead and get to it. The first thing I want to talk about, and we always seem to come back to him, is Raistlin himself. He is now black-robed, which means he is technically considered the side of evil. And he has aligned himself, at least when we see him at first, with the column that he's supposed to be protecting. He has officially aligned himself with the Queen of Darkness, with the goddess that's trying to destroy all the good in the world. So he is not only for whatever reason, he has decided to go from the red robes to the black robes. He has also specifically become the guardian of that column for the great evil that this whole story has been trying to get rid of. And he doesn't seem as sick anymore. He's no longer really frail. He can move on his own. He can do his own magic without having to have a coughing fit. He's much more stable, much more calm. Not calm, I guess is not quite the right word, because he's always been calm, but he's not, having to worry about his health and not having to have anybody beside him. So he's very much kind of this serene being at this point. He does still have his hourglass eyes, and he still, looks like he did before, but now he's much stronger. And he doesn't need Caramon. He doesn't need him to provide any strength for him. He doesn't need him to be an ally. He doesn't need him as a brother, nothing. He even leaves Ankai Bloodbane and refuses to take Caramon with him. But I will say there was a moment there that he seemed like he was considering it. But still, no, he leaves him behind, as he did on that boat. But I do believe that Raistlin is wrong in the fact that he believes that Caramon and him have become two separate people. And that is because, as we have learned, Caramon needs Raistlin almost more than Raistlin needed Caramon. And that connection between Caramon to Raistlin is still the exact same as it was before. Maybe there is a slight acceptance a little bit for Caramon and Tika at the end there as well, with the comment when he was kind of debating about whether he should take Caramon or not. So we kind of maybe see that little bit of a change as well, where he's finally like, I don't need Caramon anymore, so he can have his life. But again, it kind of ties into the fact that that Raistlin feels like they are two different people now, and I'm not 100% sure if that comment is really correct. Because to Caramon, I don't think that he views himself as a separate person. He views himself as somebody who is tied to his brother. And he repays back all his debts to his friends, at least what he has decided to call debts. What Caramon has said that he owes a debt to that Raistlin owns a debt to Caramon for all the times that he's helped him. Though Raistlin was not happy with that being told to him that he owed Caramon anything. But he does, even though grudgingly, he does help all of them escape and does help Tanis, as we found out about how Raistlin was the one that helped Tanis defeat Ariakis. He does help Caramon. He does help Tas by saving his life. And he does get all of them out, including Tika, completely away from all of the breaking down of Naraka and the Draconians inside. So we see lots of changes at this point. We've gone from where we saw him dying on the floor in that library to this point now. And it's not that he's a different person, because he really is the same person, but he's also a different person in the fact that he is very different from where we saw him last and where we've seen him through the first 2 books as well. Doesn't seem as angry, doesn't seem as, controlled by the fact that he can't do anything, not so angry, not so reliant. And I think that us parts of it is why he can finally accept some of these things and why his perception of his brother has changed. He's not so abrasive. And I think it really is a good show of Raistlin's character change. So the first 2 to the beginning of the 3rd book, to where he kind of is no longer in it, we don't really see much, at least in my opinion, character change on Raistlin's behalf. He really stays the same kind of person, the same kind of mysterious person. And now we finally have seen proof that he has changed. He is no less mysterious. The only times that we actually feel like he has any changes or anything that's possibly could be considered character change, it's usually because we find out more information about him. He gives us a little piece of himself, and that is the way that our perception of him has changed, because he finally gives us some details, or gives the other characters some details, which then provides the details to us. But we don't know anything about what's happened. We don't know why he's changed. We don't know how he got to the way he is. We don't know what he's been doing. We don't know anything. And he has, in the process of that time that we were not with him, we've completely seen a switch flipped. A change of some kind has distinctly happened, and we don't know how this happened at all. So he is still mysterious. He is still this person that we cannot pin down. We can't say this is Raistlin, and we can't say that this is his motivation and that this is his feelings on things. He's still as much a mystery as he was during books 1 and 2. But now we have proof that something has happened, and we're left not knowing what. Of course, as we see at the very last little bit, that's leaving the door open. The authors are leaving the door open for us to continue forward. And The Test of the Twins are a story about Raistlin and Caramon, and they are the 2 main characters. But especially Raistlin, you learn a lot more about him, and so we can see that door is left open by the authors, that way they can proceed with that. But in this story right here, they have really made a character that you just cannot pin down, and I find that that's the most fascinating thing ever, is that you can create a character that you can become attached to, because I find that I'm attached to Raistlin in the fact that I always want to figure him out. And I always feel like whenever I read this trilogy, you can't figure him out. There is nothing that you can actually pinpoint and be like, this is him. This is what his motivations are, other than that you know that he has his own motivations and doesn't seem to care about his friends beyond what helps him. Obviously, he does care about his friends, considering he still traveled with them all this time. He helped them all in the end so that they wouldn't be killed. Even his paying back his debt to Tass was something that, from what it sounds like, he was giving up part of his soul and putting it into Tass. That is a very big gift to give somebody who you don't care about. But you can't actually say that Raistlin does care about them in like a specific pinpointed moment. Be like, this shows that he cares about them and this much, that he would go to these lengths. You have no real baseline with him, and I find that that's so fascinating, that the authors did such a good job just keeping him such a mystery, and yet giving you enough knowledge of him that you care about him and want to know more, and that you would want to continue on to the Test of the Twins in order to figure him out, in order to see what happened, to know what change occurred. So we do know that he has changed, and he is finally the last character, I feel like, to really need a character change that didn't till this point. And he has finally grown and become something new for us to move forward with as the story for the next set of books progresses. Let me know what you think of Raistlin in the end at this point. How do you feel like he is? Do you ever feel like in this this set of books that you actually can pinpoint anything about him? Do you feel differently? Yes, no? Any comments about him? Any questions? Any concerns? Anything? Go ahead and put that down below, because I would love to talk to you about how you feel Raistlin is, especially at this point now that he has so clearly done a 180 and we have no idea what happened or how he got to this point. And then we have our other mystery character of Fizban, who his ending is the exact opposite of Raistlin, in the fact that Fizban has now had his mystery be cleared away and we actually know who we're actually dealing with, which is Paladine. Who guessed way before this that Fizban was Paladine? Was there anybody? Because I know when I first read it, maybe I'm just oblivious, but I didn't know who he was until the end. But I know a lot of people are smarter than me and can lead to clues easier. I always knew that he obviously wasn't who he said he was, but I didn't know for sure what he actually was until the end. So leave a comment down below if you totally guessed that Paladine was Fizban way before it was ever revealed. But Fizban is now, in these last set of chapters, used to bring us closure, to tie up those loose ends, and to give us some clarity. Everything that he was mysterious until the end, and now we finally get it. Now we're finally like, yes, this is the reason that all of these things didn't make sense before, and now they do. This is why he did the things that he did, and he always was just acting like he was an idiot, and that is why we had those moments of clarity where you could tell he wasn't an idiot. Though part of me really feels like Fizban is part of his personality, especially when he gets back on that the dragon and he's complaining about his hat that's still on his head. So I do honestly believe that Fizban is a part of Paladine and might just be a little bit of himself, being able to just goof off and be himself at those times where he's just being ridiculous. But it just makes me love Fizban even more, that he is this god who just acts like this moron and makes people irritated. And as he said, he heard every single little thing that Tanis and the others complained to about him, which is hilarious, in my opinion. Kind of, you know, hindsight is a wonderful thing, where you figure out that you've been talking bad about a god behind his back and he can hear you. But Fizban at the end here is used to finally figure out what was what. We now know that he was the person who originally sent them all on that journey back at the Inn of the Last Home in Solace, and everything that he's done has been in order to help these companions get to where they are now, to be able to defeat the Queen of Darkness. And he was not being an idiot, he was just guiding them in a way that they wouldn't know he was guiding them. Though he does say that technically it was really all them. All he did was just help out here and there and set the stage, that way they got them moving toward the direction that would lead them to being able to save everybody and restore the balance between the good and evil. So it is very precious, though, I think, to task for Fizban to now be officially known, or Paladine to be officially known as Fizban to the Kinder, because Tass and Fizban really created something really special between them. They had a really good friendship, something that I don't think is quite the same as Flint's, because Tass and Flint have been friends a lot longer, but something that is almost as close to Tass's heart as his relationship with Flint was. They are alike a lot, and Fizban actually trusted Tass with a lot of things. He trusted him with the knowledge of the good dragons. He trusted him with the knowledge of needing to destroy the orb. Well, I mean, like, he didn't actually say, hey, go destroy the dragon orb, but he was the one that gave him the knowledge to know that, you know, you have to walk the hard path, which made Tass be able to choose that path. Tass's growth is has a lot to do with Fizban and his encouragement and their adventures together. So, you know, Tass and Fizban really connected, and then Fizban decided to keep the name for the Kinder because of that wonderful connection that he feels to Tass, and to love Tass more than the other Kinder. I think it must be an incredible thing to have a relationship with a god, and have that god think that you are something truly special, and to consider you a friend. And really, like I just said, it just makes Fizban more amazing. That really he's a god that can do basically whatever he wants, and he just acts like this dodo bird that can't remember fireball spells. So it just makes me love him that much more. But I think just like the point of this little discussion about Fizban is to talk about how, yes, he does have the purpose of cleaning up those last ends and being like, yes, here's the clarity, here's where this, and this happened, this is why this, and this happened. As a reader, we, as well as the characters, are finally getting the closure they need to understand everything that happened, and to feel like you're not left wondering what happened. The only thing we're really left wondering, at least at this point, is Raistlin, and what his role going forward is going to be. But for everything else, story-wise, the way that they were moved with the help of Fizban. Why the reason Fizban was what he was doing, you know, why he shot them out of the sky, was because he didn't want them to be gliding in over the enemy on good dragons to be shot down out of the sky and killed. So those kind of moments that you're left wondering, like, how does he know these kind of things? This is where the clarity comes from, and we're tying up all those loose ends. And it's also, like we were talking about a little bit with Raistlin, we see character change in Fizban by having more clarity of who Fizban is. So it changes our perception, not necessarily a change of person. We do get a little bit of change in person in the fact that we know now he's not an idiot, and we've had those little glimpses of seriousness, and in this moment at the end we do see him in his serious moment role, in his paladin role, other than the last little bit where he flies away back to being Fizban. But you see the serious side of him, and you see the clarity of who he is. And so us as a reader and as characters in our story, the perception of the person has changed. Our perception of who Fizban is, of his role, of our ideas about him, of all of those kind of things, we now have a different perception than what we had at the beginning. And that is how Fizban's character change has evolved. Through us having knowledge, of us being clear, of us having these moments where we understand actually what's going on, that then changes our perception and the character's perception, and is his character development from point A to point B, if that makes any sense. What do you think of Fizban being Paladin? Again, I already asked you to comment below on if you knew that it was Fizban and Paladin were the same person to begin with, but how do you feel about it? Has anything changed for you now that you know? Does they not, because, you know, you already knew in advance? Do you think he's cool? Do you just think he's more of an idiot? What do you think? I'd love to hear and have a discussion about your love, your hate, or your neutrality of Fizban down below. Now, something that I find is really interesting about the ending of this story is we have two main things that have switched since the beginning of our story. Did any of you guys catch it or see it as well? Because I found it very, very interesting, and I haven't really noticed it before this reading in particular, or I've actually really thought about it. And that is the fact of relationships have reversed roles. Raistlin is the one who is saving Caramon here at the end. Caramon is the one who is weak, who needs help walking, who is actually in need of Raistlin to save him. Unlike normal, where Caramon's the one who's helping Raistlin being able to get his water, doing everything for him when he's weak, he helps him walk, all those other things, it's usually Caramon taking care of his brother. And now Caramon's the one that needs help from his brother, who used to usually be the weak one. Yes, that is a mirror of the dream that we had before at the beginning of book 2, or the beginning-ish of book 2. And that dream, as we've talked about in previous classes, keeps coming back and keeps showing itself. But at this point, Caramon does need Raz's help. And that is a complete 180 from the rest of the books at this point. And the second one is that Tanis is the one chasing after Laurana. And Laurana is not just giving in and saying, yes, let's have this relationship. Tanis is chasing her after she knocks him down, and he gets up and he's following her out to help save her, and she is running away from him. And at the start of these books, back in book 1, she's the one who is just running after him, and he is not necessarily running away in the same sense, but he is the one leaving her behind, and she is running after him. And now it's him who's trying to convince her to love him and give their relationship back a chance. And she's the one that's saying, I'm not so sure. I don't trust you, and I don't trust your heart towards me. So it's very much these are the two that are one of the, like we talked about in a couple classes ago, where they're the toxic relationships that we talked about. These are 2 of the 3 that we discussed, and they have completely switched to where the person who was in need or taken advantage of or whatever else has now become the person who is the stronger of the 2, the one that is on the upper edge of it, the one that is no longer getting the effects of the toxic relationship. So it's pretty interesting to see how they have evolved, that these relationships have evolved. Raistlin, whatever his character change was that we are not sure about, has made it so that way his brother is the one that relies on him. And so throughout the whole process of these books, now at the end, Raistlin's the one that has the strength and Caramon's the one that doesn't. And after the whole time of her chasing him, even with the point where she gets captured, because she's still chasing him, she still loves him and just throws herself at his feet pretty much. Now he's the one who's chasing after her and is trying to get her to slow down and is trying to get her to be with him. It's really interesting to see how the growth of these characters, or I guess you could say the evolution of these characters, has now changed the relationship dynamics to completely the other way around. Because without Tanis going through all of his changes and the stuff with Kitiara, he would not be at this point where he'd be chasing Laurana. Even though at Flotsam, he did say he realized that she was the one for him, he would not be quite at this point where he is so sure and is so desperate enough to chase after her. And if she didn't have all this crap where he seems to be not the one for her, she is now the one running away and being like, let's take a look at this. Though we know at the end they do reconcile, it is definitely from different places. He's the one that's now saying, hey, I want to have a relationship with you, and she's the one that's saying, like, let's give it some time and see if it's gonna work. And Raistlin does leave again, so we don't have a complete 180 in the fact that, Raislin's gonna take care of Caramon, but we do see that he no longer needs Caramon, and Caramon still needs Raz. And the fact that he needs to be needed, and Raistlin no longer provides that, but Caramon still needs it. So Raistlin and him have switched, even if it's not quite in the same capacity of Raistlin taking care of Caramon. Okay, Now, for our next and biggest topic of the class, at least I feel like it is. Sorry, let me adjust here. All right, let's discuss how Margaret Weiss and Tracy Hickman end the story. We've had 3 books that all make up the same story. We've just broke them down into smaller segments in order for us to be able to have an easier time getting through it. So you don't feel like you're just trudging along for, I think all of these are 500-page books. Let me see. No, actually they're not quite as long as I was thinking of, but they do have tiny print, so 380 is what this book was, at least for this copy, is 380 with tiny print. So if all 3 of them were almost 400 pages, that is a heck of a lot of pages. And so we break them up into segments, that way it's easier for us to read it. So how did they end this story? We've seen how they've bridged the gaps between one part of the story and another part of the story, between book 1 and 2, and books 2 and 3. But now how do they end the story? So first of all, we have to look at, we got from point A to a point B. And these points have had that progression to get there. So we've had a beginning and an end, and we've had some kind of progression to get there. The story has evolved during this progression and has gone to a distinctly different point. At the beginning of point A, we didn't have any, not that we didn't have any notion, but we had little notion of the evil in the world, of Queen Takhisis, of anything like that. We didn't even know that the draconians that they encountered at the beginning were because of Queen Takhisis, or what any of that meant. We just knew about the blue, the staff. Oh my gosh. All of a sudden, I'm like, what was the staff called again? The blue... Oh my gosh. Whatever. I keep wanting to say gemstone because it's the green gemstone man. But the blue staff that she has at the beginning. Sorry. Anyone is welcome to comment down below and be like, you're an idiot. This is what it was called. I can't believe you don't remember. Total blank though. Anyway, let's move on. You know what I'm talking about. Gold moon staff. That they had that at the beginning. And then here at the end, we have just eradicated the evil from the world, and it's gone into chaos, and we have restored the balance, but there's still that evil just now running around crazy in Naraka and might still be taking effect throughout the world. And the fact that it's going to take some while to clean that up. But the characters are different, the people are different. We have people who have died, we have people who have changed, we have people who have become from good to bad. We've got all these different things that have made it so point A is no longer point B. We have places that have burned to the ground, so they're no longer available to even be lived at. We have places who, like Sylvanisti, who even though they didn't burn, it's unlivable yet. We've got places that aren't livable just in the fact that people have been run from their homes, like Qualinisti. We've got elves fighting elves. We've got the dwarves that are just holed up in their caves, and knights that have to put their whole entire structure together because they lost most of their knighthood. So point A and point B are distinctly different points. We've actually gone, grown, and the whole story has evolved, and the whole world has evolved to be at a different point. Even the feel of everything is different. Book 1, we had lots of, lightheartedness and hope and that kind of stuff. And then we go into book 2 where we're at the really heart of the despair phase. And we pull out of that, just like we talked about how this is spring dawning, this is our new start, this is where we're pulling out of that despair, and we do win. But it's kind of a bittersweet moment. I don't know if you felt that way about it either, as well, but I really feel like it is kind of bittersweet, because even though it's the end, it's not the same, and the characters can tell that. And so it's like their innocence is gone, I guess you could say, in a way. They can't be the same from after all this experience. And so we don't totally feel like we're back to being lighthearted, especially since the evil has just been eradicated. Like, we literally, like, Queen Tychus is dead, they escape, and then boom, the story's over. So it's not even like you get the downtime to get that lightheartedness back. It's a solemn event. Okay, yes, we've destroyed this evil and we're not gonna all die, and that's great. But something's changed, and now we gotta figure out what our new sense of goal, our new life is gonna be like. And it's having to refigure everything out. On that note, it's also not a clear ending. It's not like a clean-cut ending. We don't know where they're going to go from here. And they're trying to figure out themselves. They're trying to be like, okay, we've been on this journey, been going crazy, crazy, crazy. All this stuff is happening, all this stuff that we've been thrown into, and now it's over. What are they going to do? How are they going to go from there? And since they've lost people and lost and changed as part of them, lost some things about themselves, changed things about themselves through this journey, they're going to have to refigure out how to live life. They're going to have to rebuild the world. It's not just like everything's happy-go-lucky now. The world is still rampaging with a bunch of draconians that are going to need to be killed. And people are going to need to be protected. And we've still got the Dragon High Lords. We still got Kitiara, who wants to rule the world. So it's not a clear-cut ending. It's not just like hey, everything's good again and life goes back to normal kind of ending. It's a good ending, but it's a solemn ending, like I mentioned before. And then it's not a 5-month later kind of moment. Like we really just stop at the end. And we have a little snippet with Raistlin. We don't even see where they're gonna go. We don't have the kind of ending where, like, how not all authors, but several authors, at times, if they are ending the story completely with these characters, they tack on a little ending that's like, 5 months later, or however many months later, and you can see them after everything's passed, and you see what their life is. We don't get that either. So it doesn't feel rushed to me, but it does feel like this is the story and this is the world now, and then we're dropped out. Part of that might be because they do plan on making the Test of the Twins, which is coming after this story. But I don't know how much they had planned when they had written it, other than that they were going to do more. They just decided, hey, this is the story that we're going to tell, and the ending, we're going to put you right on the cusp. They won, and now you don't know what's going to happen to them next. Though a lot of times that is life, I guess, the messiness of life, and maybe that's what they're trying to show with this ending. The way they ended it this way is the messiness that comes with life, and not always knowing things, and having to deal with the uncertainty of where you're going to go. So even though we have created, we have cleaned up the loose ends, especially like we mentioned with Fizban. Most of the loose ends, story-wise, are cleaned up. But we have this open ending with Raz and with all the characters. So Raislin's the one that makes us have all those questions about, what's going to happen with that? Why is that happening? Who is he? That kind of stuff. But all these characters, even though they mention, hey, we're going to go and do this, and we think that's our plan moving forward, we don't actually see them doing that. We don't see them having that life experience where they finally have adjusted to what their new normal is going to be. So everyone a little bit has a loose ending, because no one can really know for sure exactly what they're going to be doing in the future. Maybe some of those plans change. Maybe some of them don't. We don't know. And that is very loose for the ending, at least for the readers, of knowing where our characters are and how they're going to move forward. And then, obviously, like we've been talking about, we do have an opening for a continuation. And the thing that's interesting about this is the fact that they have closed out the story and it has gotten, like we've mentioned, those tied ends for the actual storyline. And then they bring in just a little bit, a hint of something that's an opening, which means that technically you could read this and there could be no more, but they leave that opening for themselves. And I'm sure the authors knew, hey, they wanted to do this next. They might have had a plan, they might not have, but they knew that they wanted to do something that had the start of the idea that would come from that moment. But they leave us a little bit of an opening in order for there to be the continuation. So they don't just cut it off and say, hey, this is our story. They do leave that opening on purpose and make it so we want to read more. Do keep us interested in the Dragonlance series and the Dragonlance characters and wanting to see what happens next. So yeah, that I feel like it's a pretty good summary of how they've ended it. We've got tied up our story, we've got our opening for the next continuation, and we've gotten from point A to point B, and it is a distinctly different point of time and different point of where they're at, if that makes any sense. I feel like sometimes I don't make sense, as I've mentioned in many videos. Point A and point B we've seen the progression. We've seen that it's not the same thing. It's not like we did a circle where we were at this point and we went around and now we're back to where we were before. We've specifically gone from one thing to another thing. Let me know what you think of all that down below. If you think I've missed anything about the ending, or if there's anything you want me to clarify, discuss a little bit more, I'd be happy to answer any questions, comments, or concerns. Now, last but not least, as always, we've got our nitty gritty for our last little section here. The first one I want to bring up is that Kitiara ends up with the crown. What will that mean, if anything? It's one of those things. I know we talked before about, pretty much story-wise, all the loose ends were tied up, other than Raistlin, but Kitiara is a little bit of a loose end in the fact that we don't know what it means that she got the crown. But what does the crown actually mean if the Queen of Darkness is gone? So it seems important. It seems like something to keep in mind for going forward with a continuation of Test of the Twins. But how much does it matter at this point? We don't know enough about the whole situation with the crown and what it means and if it existed before the Queen of Darkness, which I always have assumed that it didn't, and that was part of the Queen of Darkness's hierarchy or whatever. But you don't know. It is a little bit of a loose end there. Maybe that will come to pass, maybe it won't. But I do find it's very interesting that in the end, she specifically had Lord Soth, bring it to her. And she was very pleased at the end to have it. And Lord Soth is still in her employ. Is happily in her employ at this point. So he also makes comments, though, about the fact that he is intrigued by her and might possibly want her in death, which I'm sure she does not want herself. Anyway, so a little bit of a loose end is Kitiara and her getting the crown. So just keep your mind open to that. The next thing I want to talk about is the fact that I have mixed feelings about Laurana and Tanis's ending, which is going to actually be very interesting to people who know me really well, because I'm very much a romantic. I always want the happy ending. And I remember when I first read it, that I was very irritated with the fact that Laurana was no longer as in love with Tanis, and that it wasn't a very clear-cut, they're together, they're happy ending. But now that I've read it this time, I really see it in a different light, especially with us breaking all of this stuff down and realizing how toxic Tanis was to Laurana. I have mixed feelings, because part of me wants to have them together. Like I said, I'm always the romantic, and I do think that, that's the love interest that, that you want to get together the whole time, and you really want Tanis to wake up and see, like, yeah, hello, she's right there in front of you. But at the same time, I feel like he's done so much damage to her that I feel kind of bad that she takes him back. You know what I mean? How do you guys feel about this? Because I just feel like I really want them to be together, especially now that Tennyson has realized that he loves her and is going to treat her right and is going to, have a future with her and realizes that that's what he wants. Part of me feels like Laurana deserves better than a guy who took however many years he was gone, practically cheating on her because they were engaged beforehand, or at least promised to each other, and then went back to her during his weakest moments and couldn't just let her go in the end. And she gets herself captured only to think that he's still with her. And it just is like, doesn't she deserve a little bit better than that? To then to be treated all that way? So it makes me much more understanding of the fact that she said, no, we're going to see where this goes first. We need to take some steps back and rebuild. So part of me is kind of bittersweet on that. I really wanted them to, part of me really wants them to be happy right away, and part of me is like, should they even be together to begin with at the end at this point? How do you feel about Tanis and Laurana? I'd really love to know. Any of you other romantics out there feel the same way? Any of you still at the yes, die hard, be together? Some of you die hard, no, you shouldn't be together? Let me know down below. And the last one that I want for this Nitty Gritty is a test of the twins hint from Fizban. In this last little bit where he's talking to everybody, he does hint at the fact of what's to happen. So if anybody else caught what that was, you know what I'm talking about. Those who haven't read Test of Twins yet, hopefully by the time that you have read it, and if you go back and review, you will catch the hint as well. But I thought it was really fun. It's my first time really noticing, again, so many things that I've noticed now that I actually like in-depth look at these books and the chapters and events in specific. But I finally caught this moment where it's like, that is total reference to Test of the Twins. And I just think it's so fun that Fizban did that little teaser there. And I guess that's the end of our discussion on our Dragons of Spring Dawning. I officially finished. Woo! You're probably like, it's about time, Amy. You took too long with our videos. I read all the way through all 3 books right at the very beginning. But I really hope you enjoyed it all. I really hope you learned a lot, just like I learned a lot with reading it and discussing it together with you guys. I'm pretty excited that we finished it though, and we're able to finally look at the whole big picture. If there's any further comments, questions, concerns, go ahead and leave them either down below, or you can go ahead and leave them on my Twitter at fantasyfiction1. I would still love to have a discussion with you on these books and any other topics that you'd like to discuss, or anything that I didn't get to that you think would have been great, or if you want to talk about the story as a whole, whatever. Anything and everything, I would love to have a discussion and to learn from you still, even if we are done reading the trilogy. Now, like I said before, there are tons and tons of Dragonlance books, including the next set, which is the Test of the Twins. And of course, we are going to come back to those. But I thought we could do something a little bit different for our next set of books. We're going to be starting a series that does have quite a lot of books. I think it's 13 or 14 at this point. I have to double check the number, but there's quite a few. And so we're probably only going to read a couple of them, and then we'll just jump to something else and come back. But I really wanted us to be able to look at a completely different kind of story, look at something else, and discover a new adventure. So I don't have it in paperback, I only have it in Kindle, so I'll flash the cover up here somewhere on the screen so you can see it. But it's going to be the next set of books that the next book we're going to be doing is going to be Moon Called by Patricia Briggs, who is also one of my very top favorite authors, and I really love her Mercy Thompson series, which is what we're going to be starting next time. So for the next class, it's going to be chapters 1 through 5, like always. The words are bigger in this set of books than in our Dragonlance books, so they'll probably go a bit quicker for you. It's going to be pages 1 through 84. At least that is for the version on the Kindle that I have. So your paperback might be a little different. But yeah, I'm really excited to start this new journey with you. I know I've gotten a lot of comments saying that people really love me discussing the Dragonlance books because they're their favorite books. So hopefully you will still stick with me, those who came to Sylvia's channel for Dragonlance. And if you haven't read Patricia Briggs' Mercy Thompson series, hopefully you'll give it a try with us. And if you already love Mercy Thompson, that will be great. Hopefully you're excited to read it with me because I'm super excited to get started on it. Whew. All right. Any comments, questions, concerns, like I said before, you're always welcome to contact me. And I hope to see you on our next class where we start our Mercy Thompson book. And I hope that you enjoy reading it if you haven't already read it before. I'll see you guys then. Bye.